Hey Stinks. Thank you so much for joining us first of all. But before you sit with us at the wet bench, we just wanted to say that this show is intended for an adult audience. Although it's a light-hearted and relaxed show, it contains very strong language, strong sex references, and will occasionally cover some very sensitive topics. Please always check the episode descriptions for detailed content warnings and time codes for those sections if you wish to skip them, so you can enjoy your time with us in a way that's best for you. Enjoy! Off we start then. Hi, I'm Owen.
And I'm Bret.
And thank you for joining us on the wet bench. Today, we actually have a really fun episode where we actually have the creator of Monster High, Garrett Sander.
Our first ever guest.
Hello. We'd had a little pre-show chat a few days ago and gotten a little hello out, but it's really nice to be able to do something proper and have something that's going out there. This is our first ever interview of somebody else.
It is, yeah. Yeah, you're the first ever guest.
Well, I feel very honored. Thank you.
Plus, honestly, it was, God, it was absolutely insane because we'd already said when we'd started the podcast, we were like, we're going to do a Monster High episode. This is going to be fun. And then I'd looked around and I was like, do you know who I would really like to have on? Garrett Sander. So I went through your website and then I looked through and it was like, oh, contact me. And I was like, contact? Go on then. It was a complete shot in the dark. I was sat in bed and all of a sudden just got a, hi, yes, I'd love to join on. And I sat for a second and I was like, that didn't happen. And then I went downstairs and said,
I was in the middle of making dinner.
Yeah, God, everyone was in the house. I just go down and I'm like, Bret, he emailed and he was like, what?
Well, actually, I didn't even know that he'd messaged. So you came down and you were like, Garrett Sanders replied. And I was like, replied to what? I was like, what are you talking about? He explained in the middle of some very deep breaths what had transpired. And I was like, oh, okay.
And all of a sudden just the excitement just absolutely exploded of Garrett Sander has just agreed to be on the episode. It's like, not only this being a small thing, we only have as we speak 120 followers on Instagram. That's nothing. And to have you turn around and say, yeah, oh, come on, right. That was just so nice. Because I feel like if you would have asked quite a lot of people who were a big influence on things, I'd be like, ew, no, where's the money? I think I've got about 20p in my bank account. If you want it, shoot me a PayPal. But enough about us. I think it would be nice for the people that don't know, who are you?
Hi, I'm Garrett Sander. I'm best known as the creator of Monster High. So way back in 2007, I was working at Mattel as a packaging designer, and we had the task of coming up with a brand new brand. And out of that, Monster High was born. So we worked on it for about 3 years before it launched in 2010, and worked on this little idea that I had and thought, I like it. I hope other people like it. Never thought it'd become as big as it did. So it's quite a journey and very fun.
How long would you say your Monster High journey went on then? So from 2007, 2016 it was?
Yeah, I worked on it from 2007 to 2016.
So about to say, so that's what, 9 years? 9
Yeah.
years, nice. A decade of just wow. So I know that you're a little bit of the history is that you had started it from 2007 whilst it was released in 2009. It was actually pushed back twice.
Yeah, so we started the concept in 2007 and we had it the character was sort of designed and everything like that, and they decided to wait to push it out to 2008 because they wanted a live action movie. So, which, as we know, they just got one. So it pushed out, and then so we had everything tooled, which means they'd made all of the manufacturing tools to actually produce the doll. So everything was done and ready to go. So it was just sitting there, waiting to start. And then in 2009, they're like, "Oh, we don't have a movie yet. Let's wait. We're gonna wait again." And then luckily management shifted and changed, and the people who we were under now were like, "Why are we just sitting on this brand? We need to get it out the door before somebody else does this." And so then we did the full launch in 2010.
What was what was the first doll that you actually came up with out
Frank,
of, was it Frankie?
yeah, Frankie was the first one. So when we had like brainstormed the stuff, we'd gone shopping with like 12 and 13-year-old girls to see what they bought. We gave them money. We followed them around the mall, saw what they bought. And at the time, skulls were starting to trickle down into like kid stuff and
Yeah.
teen stuff. And one of them had bought a Skull Animals plush, and their tagline was "Dead animals need love too." And I was like, "Well, what if it was dead dolls need fashion too?" And we did dead dolls, and everyone laughed like, "Ha ha ha!" Mattel's never gonna make dead dolls. Like, you need to stop. I thought there was something there, so I went home, and at first it was like, "Oh, what if they were zombies?" But then I also knew like you want characters that are very different from each other, and it's hard when everything's the same. So like if they're all
Mm.
zombies, they also have to look the same, and how do you really differentiate them? I'm like, well, why can't they all just be different monsters? And so then Frankie was the first one that I drew, and it literally I drew it. It said Frankie Stein, wrote the date, and that's what her birthday is too. So her birthday is the actual date
Oh
that
no.
I signed the first drawing of her. So
Oh my God.
she looks
That's a
very
nice
different.
little
Like, it's very,
Easter egg.
like very fashiony. She has like the instead of having just on the cheek, she has like a full scar down the cross of her face and stuff like that.
Oh
But yeah.
nice.
Oh God. So, I mean, when you were actually manufacturing Frankie, and obviously the design got like a lot more refined, when they saw kind of like the scar across the face, because I'm assuming that was kind of the artwork that you showed to the, what are they called? Headboard? Leaderboard?
Oh,
Head-
like the management team.
Yes. Did they kind of see that and say, no, that's a bit much. Well, let's tone it down a bit.
So yeah, we started with Frankie like that, and they were just rough sketches of like, oh, this is kind of what it could look like, and we toned things down from there because a lot of it was pushing back on like girls don't like monsters, they're not gonna like
Yeah.
monsters. Back, so we ended up doing testing of like three different options of dolls. So there was like monstery, half monster, half human, and then like they were just humans who like monsters, but kind of not really. It was like they're like inspired by, but not really. Like if you look at them, you couldn't tell like, oh, one's supposed to be a werewolf and one's a vampire. You couldn't
Mm.
really tell that. It's just sort of like they had like small details of vampire, werewolf, and stuff on them. And when we took it into testing, luckily girls really liked like the combination of the two. So like they looked half human but half monsters, but they liked all the little monstery details on them. But we did learn from testing, which we were told girls don't like green, so Frankie can't be green. So we didn't make Frankie green in one of the options of the dolls, or two of the options of the dolls. But one we're like, let's try it and just see. But we showed the option where she was just like a sort of skin tone character, and the first thing out of one of the girls' mouths was like, "Wait, if her dad is Frankenstein, why isn't she green?" And I was like, "Yes, thank you." So it felt sort of vindicated there, and that's how we got to make Frankie's skin green.
Oh, bless. I think a big thing that I've kind of gathered from I don't know if it's just Mattel, but just doll companies in general, like I feel like they seem to overestimate what girls like instead of asking like you did, which thank God you did and put that idea forward because obviously look at what it's become. But like with Encanto, for example, like you've got Isabella, and everyone thought, well, she's a lot more feminine. So obviously she's gonna sell the most. And then as it turned out, it was
Wasn't it the strong one?
yeah, Louisa the
Yeah,
strong one,
Louisa.
and then Mirabel. So it's just kind of interesting to see how they're constantly like, it's got to be completely feminine,
Yeah.
it's got to be completely normal, and then everybody turns around and goes, no, let's have a little bit of
I actually really
uniqueness,
like
have
that
a bit
one.
of fun.
Uh, It, I think testing is hard. Like I appreciate testing; it can give you some valuable insights, but I don't think it should be making decisions on things a lot of the times, and that's what they use it for. They're like, well, the data tells us, but I just feel like a lot of times the data changes all the time, or things change socially that you can't account for with the year that it's going to come out and things like that. So it's all crapshoot. Like no matter what you do,
Mm.
it's all crapshoot. It could succeed or it couldn't. It's just, are you willing to take the risk on something that's a little bit different than what's out there to see if that will do better than the norm, which I think the past usually proves that it usually does. So
Yeah. I mean, out of curiosity, because obviously, like you said, toy testing is wonderful because you can get a lot of valuable insight from it. Um, but it is still only it's only for the people in the room. Like, and
yeah,
I was literally just curious, what sort of sample sizes are like is toy testing like? Like, how many people do you actually test a toy with?
it's usually like 8 to 10 girls in
Yeah.
groups of 4 or 5 groups, and that's
Right.
about it.
Okay.
And it's in a testing facility that's near Mattel, so it's usually like Southern California. So well, and usually they can
Right.
keep a really diverse group, but not always. So, sometimes it's like tough because you don't have like everyone having a voice in the room to say something. So you're basing it on, a lot of similar looking people making a decision about something, which can be frustrating at times. So that's why I always try to take it with a grain of salt and be like, okay, that's valuable, but it's still a small sample size compared to the
Yeah.
entire
Again,
country.
like considering what the rollout ended up
Yeah.
being.
With oh God, my brain's just gone empty. Nothing new. So just out of curiosity then, because I feel like three times we've been told that there's going to be a Monster High live action movie. So there was the one before the dolls came out. I know that there was meant to be one after the dolls came out. And then obviously we're getting one now, which I'm very excited to see because it's by Warner Brothers. So nice budget there. But before the dolls were released, do you have any insight into what the movie was going to be?
All I know is that they were talking to studios, but nothing ever really came of it.
Oh.
Um, so like that's why there was the book series that Lisa Harrison did,
Mm.
which was really cool, but she was just given sort of carte blanche. She was given the character names and maybe like little brief bios, and that was it. That was all she was given. And so like they didn't really meld together, which was a little frustrating, but that's how the industry works sometimes. Yeah, and then it's actually I think Universal's doing the new live action movie. So
Oh,
Universal.
so I was just
yeah.
completely wrong. That's fair.
Maybe.
I'm used to giving out misinformation. Um, okay, so one thing that I was thinking earlier is with the little bit of research through your past interviews is um when you actually started drawing Frankenstein and brought it up and got some of your co-workers together to kind of brainstorm and make up more ideas. So Frankenstein was your idea. What did everyone else come to the table with?
So I had pitched, I'd come in with, hey, I want to be a school about teenage monsters. Here's what I think are the most popular monsters. So I think there should be a Frankenstein. Here's Frankie. We should have a vampire girl, a werewolf girl, some sort of, we called her a creature from the Black Lagoon, the girl originally. But it's trademark, so you can't say that. And then I had done like the main six, I think, because there was Deuce was there, and then Operetta was there, but she was originally in Cleo's spot. So she was sort of the drama queen. She was the school bitch, that type of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but then as we were working, there was concern that girls didn't know what the Phantom of the Opera was. So we switched it out to be a mummy, since a mummy's, more well-known type of monster. And it worked out. Cleo was absolutely amazing. So, that's one of those nice things that worked out and we swapped out. So a lot of what we would do is then brainstorm, okay, if this is the monster, what are the sort of characteristics? What are they doing? We brainstorm a lot of like, what are the school, like trying to figure out what are the classes that they take. Like instead of home ec, they took home ick, that type of stuff. How can we do all those monster puns? And we're trying to sort of build the world like, okay, so what do they do for fun? What are their favorite foods? All that type of stuff was sort of how we sort of fleshed out the world together.
I must say all of the puns because you recently watched the
Frights camera action.
Uh-huh.
yeah and the working out Monster High puns has kind of become part of our vernacular now. Like and like sometimes we like try and outdo each other, don't we?
It's honestly like something that I saw online a while ago was someone called it Punster High instead, and I was like, yeah, that kind of works. That's fun. I like that.
It's endearing.
I'm gonna say there was a lot of like humor and love behind it, which honestly really did flush it out. Because I think, I mean, one of the main things that I saw about it whilst I was doing research on it, because funnily enough, this episode will come out after the Monster High episode we do. So yeah, but it'll be explained in that one. But I know that it was Barbie was the top dog. Brat started worming its way up, and then Monster High kind of slammed its position as like the number two selling toy in North America, which was absolutely insane. And for it being like so different, where my thought was going with that, I don't know. But just kind of like how much thought and creativity was put behind it, basically, is just kind of astounding and admirable. But a thought that I had a bit ago was how much it's actually changed from the photos you've put on your Instagram. Because you've got the like the prototypes and stuff, but like the original prototypes of the, I believe it was like a little bit of my scene, a bit of unreleased dolls as well, and homemade
Yeah.
things. Um, so with the actual look of them themselves, like how they are now from Generation One, did they look like that originally, or was it just like a constant change of what the head mold was going to be in the body mold? Because they're incredibly unique.
Oh yeah, I mean, we started off like the originals that I posted were just we would kit bash things all the time just to help show what it could look like. Because you have to remember you're also presenting to a lot of people who they don't visualize things, so you need to
Mm.
show them this is what it could be, this is what it could look like. So getting something in 3D just help show the idea is very helpful. And then the design process is like constant changing. Like usually things don't look exactly like the first drawing you do compared to what the final thing comes out because you're refining it, you're working through stuff as you add more characters, like, oh, wait, we really like this. We should make sure all the other characters have this on it too. And it is like working at a big company, it's still a lot of people helping to work on things too. So it's not just, well, I got to help lead and really design direct everything, which I was very fortunate to do. I wouldn't do everything. I had a lot of great people I was working with who were helping with, come up with additional characters and help with sculpting stuff and all that type of thing. So it was a lot of fun, and because I'd been in the packaging side, I knew some about the product, but I was getting, a crash course in product design too, which is really cool.
I was gonna say you were the one that created all of the original boxes, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. Since I was a packaging designer at the time, I got to do all of the first wave. I did all the packaging too. So
Oh my God. So you really put like a ridiculous amount of effort in then.
yeah, it was a
Um
lot of work. It was fun, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
could
can
imagine, but it paid off.
Yeah.
Um so kind of like with characters then, obviously there's a lot out there, like from like folklore to mythical to just like I mean now celebrities. I see RuPaul in your back.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna say I got mine a few days ago. She's huge. I love her.
Yeah, she's great.
Um, but
You had to like reconfigure your entire display
oh god,
to
yeah.
actually fit RuPaul because she's still in her box. I don't think she's ever exiting that box, is she?
No, she's never getting a speck of dust on her. Um,
Like everything had to be changed.
so like out of all of the characters, the monsters, stuff like that, kind of like a two-parter question then, and I'll start with, is there anything that you wish was different? Like looking back, if you could have gone back in time, if there was anything you could have changed about the main six, the school, that just anything, what would you have changed or would you have kept it the same?
Uh, I think like with the main six and everything, it turned out pretty good. Like I'm very happy with how it turned out. I think it was meant to be that way, after everything that happened, like with Operetta switching out to be Cleo and all that stuff. It just worked and everything sort of fell into place and fit a little bit better. And those are some of the refinements that happened that where at first you're like, oh, I don't want Operetta to come out. But then it was like, oh wait, Cleo's just amazing. Like I absolutely loved her. So I think that worked out really well. I mean, going along, there were characters that I wish like Pharaoh was supposed to get made for New York and we didn't get to make him. So it was like, I wish he could have got made, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it, one thing that I actually really wanted to ask as well, because obviously all of them are kind of taking their inspirations from very different places. Like you've got some like really ancient folklore from stuff like vampires, but you've also got stuff that's inspired by cinema, like things like Frankenstein. Um, and what I wanted to ask was there kind of like an inspiration point or a monster or a reference that you really wanted to get into a doll but never had the chance to?
Oh, I mean, we made like I think over 75 different characters into dolls, and there were still a lot
I
of
did
like,
not know there
yeah,
were that
that's
many.
crazy. Like, that's a lot of different characters to get made as dolls, and we had a lot that were in uh the webisodes and the animation too.
Mm.
Uh, I'm trying to think. I mean, near the end, there was supposed to be a nine-tailed fox girl, which I thought would have been really cool. She was going to be from
Oh,
Korea. Like that would have been a really cool doll. Um, I mean, he's coming out now, but like Spelden was one of the characters that was sort of in the beginning. I did like just rough sketches like, oh, it'd be cool if we had a witch boy. Because a lot of it was playing off of because so many of the monsters were male. Like, okay, they all have teenage daughters, but then if they're a female monster, let's make them a male character. So like that's why Deuce is a boy and stuff like that. So it was like trying to swip all of the genders and stuff like that.
Oh.
Um, so it would have been cool to have like a witch boy from the beginning. It just he never happened. But
Mm.
then we got to mention him later on, and now there's the Pride comic that came out with a minute. That's really cool. So it's fun to see him get to, see the light of day.
Spotlight he deserves. I mean, kind of just like a throw out then. So, Castafius and Spelden related or completely unrelated?
No, they're related. Yeah, so they're brother and sister. And I think if I remember correctly, she mentions him in her diary, and then he's mentioned in Valentine's diary too.
Nice. I mean, to be honest, while we're actually on uh Valentine and Spelden then, um just something that kind of like racks around my head is just kind of LGBT stuff in G1 as it is. Obviously if this is kind of touchy, but obviously a lot of it was pushed back because they said it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel kind of at the moment a little bit bittersweet about it. I don't know how you feel, but with the Pride collection coming out and seeing the whole like Claudine and Toralei thing, I thought that was lovely. But then I just kind of thought, but when it was Generation One, it was pushed back and told that it wasn't the right time, even though the entire brand's identity, be yourself, be unique, be a monster, was inclusive of everyone. So I don't know, it was just a bit of a bittersweet feeling of this is something that should have been in it from the first place. And I think it was absolutely lovely that you somehow got to trickle into Valentine's story about Spelden and kind of getting little like cracks in there. But I mean, is there anything you kind of feel about that towards now?
Oh, I mean, it was definitely frustrating at times, like when we wanted to just be able to say it, but we couldn't because it was a kid's line and stuff
Mm.
like that. I mean, it was just that was how it was then, unfortunately.
Yeah.
For kids stuff, it was really hard to get in it. Like cartoons couldn't have it in it. Otherwise, it couldn't have like the ratings for them to watch it and stuff like that. So it was very frustrating. So we snuck it in where we could and, tried to do the best that we could to get it in there. And it's nice to see that it's finally happening. So
Yeah.
um but I mean, that's sort of like the one thing, the queer community's always going to try to sneak it in there so you can find it and it's hidden within the lines and you could always find it to find who, about and see it and you kind of
That's
gather
probably why.
together all that stuff. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's probably why, because for so long, I think queer people get fed narratives that reflect them in, like you say, this kind of like drib drab sort of way. I think that's probably why all of us love watching our favorite shows and stuff and literally searching with like a like a magnifying glass to find all of the queer subtext and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, something that's actually pretty interesting about that now that I think about it is when it comes to horror, and you're kind of the literate one, so correct me if I'm wrong, but in a lot of original horror and also Frankenstein, isn't there like a little bit of like homoerotic stuff thrown in there? Like a lot of original horror
Oh,
is kind of gay.
well, yeah, I mean, horror, especially from kind of like the 60s onwards, has pretty much the horror and sci-fi in general has always been very allegory heavy. Um, and I mean, I don't know anything specifically about Frankenstein. There's probably loads of queer readings of Frankenstein, but yeah, horror has always been kind of like, because you're already doing crazy stuff, so all of the queer stuff doesn't seem as crazy in comparison to, zombies and stuff. So
Yeah.
you're
Um,
already breaking the looking glass, so it doesn't really matter for then.
I think like if I mean with that being the case, I also think it's kind of magic, if you will, that as a gay man yourself, you've now come out with a horror brand and kind of done the exact same thing that they did back in the day. Of all of these horror things had these gay subtexts, and then you've now brought out another horror thing, and as I mean, as horror as it can be for kids, and brought a new life into like gothic and creepy things, and it still have some. Oh. Is she off?
Oh, hang on.
Our little ring lights decided to go walks.
Oh, no worries.
She isn't sitting up, girl. It's fine. Oh, next one.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Welcome, Shay.
to kind of breathe new life into that, and while I mean, me personally feel still a little bit bittersweet about it not being allowed to be a mainstream thing, because even though now they have the clanky ship and it's like Deuce has two mums, which is absolutely beautiful, it's still kind of got a bit of a combat and a bit of a should we put that in? Because we don't know how people are going to react. But I just wish Mattel had the balls at the time to say, well, this is kind of a one of the best selling dolls. Like, let's throw something in there because you know what the message is. You've already got the controversy about it being witchcraft in the first place. Double down, make it something so different that you stand out, which it now has done. But I just wish it would have taken that Mattel would have taken the step up further to say, yeah, Valentine's a fruit. Love it.
I think that's the hard part with such big corporations too, is like you can get some things through and be a little controversial, like the whole monster thing, witchcraft thing, but then like you can only push it so far because they're most concerned about sales. Because if they don't have sales, they don't have a
Absolutely.
company. Like that's the biggest concern is, well, will this hurt sales? And that was a big concern back then too, is like, it already has people freaking out that they're monsters, that we're getting kids to worship the devil.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I remember learning it was like immensely popular in Russia, like which I was surprised by. It was like the number one toy in Russia. There are articles that were like Monster High is getting your kids to worship Satan, and it only made it more popular there with kids. So it was just
It
like,
always does stuff like that. It like whenever I see like the like the Christian Parents Organization is like condemning a new movie that's coming out, I was like, well, I'm sat. Like that I'm sold.
I mean, the fun thing about it is they're alternative dolls. And especially like with that sentiment, the moment someone says, hey, you shouldn't like this, alternative dolls for alternative kids being told to not like an alternative
They're
thing,
definitely gonna like
bet
it.
your ass they're gonna jump right on it. And I mean, to be fair, seeing like it get revived, I love it. I mean, I only just started collecting them myself just before it kind of blew up on TikTok again. Because after I'd bought Claudine, which was absolutely phenomenal, I was like, oh my God, I have a G1 in my hands. This is so cool. Um, and she's off again.
No, it's
Okay.
fine.
It was kind of interesting to see like all of the TikTokers come out with like makeup looks and stuff, and then everyone was saying, oh, I loved Monster High as a kid. And all of a sudden it just started creeping up and up and
Yeah.
up and up. And you're like, yes, bring out the alternative girlies, bring out the Hot Topic versions of it. Mattel Creations coming out. I was like, eating it up. Consumerism at its finest. And I have a big spoon. Um, but with kind of the the controversies surrounding Monster High, um, with kind of like the parents saying that it was like the kids are gonna start worshipping the devil, even though they're like 8 years old. What they're gonna do? Go out
An
and get a
adult.
Ouija board? It's not happening. Um, what would you say was actually like the biggest controversy that Monster High actually had to face?
when the line first came out, there was a lot of backlash for what the dolls were wearing, that they weren't wearing enough clothes. So that actually the second season, I think the fans call it, was it school's out, but we called it internally back to school. So they all got new outfits. But they were like, we covered them from like head to toe, and it still didn't matter because no matter what you put a doll in, people will always say she's never wearing enough because it's just this thing against women and what they wear. Like it's just
Mm.
always so frustrating. So like we just learned no matter what we do, it's never going to be good enough. So we should just put them in what we think is the best and, makes them look fun and helps relate their personality and is of the time, so I think the second line looked really good. We ended up getting for some reason a little bit more money to use on the doll, so we got a little more detail in them. So
Yeah.
a lot of fun to work on that line because they got a little more extra detail and stuff like that. But it was just frustrating to have to be like, oh, we have to cover them from head to toe. So
I mean, you did a good job
J-
though.
Just send them all out in like the sickest ski gear, like head to toe.
that's one thing we never did a winter line for Monster High. So
I thought that would be a really cool line to do.
I mean,
I think.
the one that did happen was oh my God, it's like one of my favorite Monster High movies. How can I forget what it's called? The Halloween one.
Ghouls Rule.
Ghouls Rule. That is the one. That was the first ever Monster High movie I watched. Had me hooked. Loved the subtext in it. Loved the message. Honestly, I jumped right on it. Um, but I mean, to have like a Halloween line like that, that was honestly like really fun. Even though it was more so like high fashion in their actual like monster type.
Yeah.
But I still think it was nice that you got to lean into that. I mean, Claudine's got her holiday look.
Holiday Doll. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was quite fun. And obviously like New Year's, Valentine's, I mean, the Claude and Draculaura pack, the Forbidden Love one, I begged my parents for that as a kid. And I was like, yeah, but if you think about it, there is a boy in it as well. So like technically, and they were like, Owen, drop it, you're not getting it. And I was like, but that's a boy. But those two were just absolutely beautiful. And one thing that, I mean, when I moved in and I started like showing them to him, because obviously when you're dating, if you mention to anyone, oh yeah, I'm a collector, and they're like, oh yeah, what do you collect? And you're like, 12-inch plastic women. And you're like, blocked. He was so cool with it straight away, which was phenomenal. And when he wanted to learn
Well,
about
for,
it,
for me, I not only knew nothing about Monster High, I had never actually met anyone that collected any toys before. So, and I'm just someone that's just interested to learn about something new. So when I started talking to him and he mentioned them, I was just I was just really just like genuinely interested. So, and plus I was just like, well, I really like him, so I'm gonna have to get on board at some point.
nice. Oh, I mean, to be fair, having someone that interested in your interests boosts the morale. It's like, oh, perfect. I am buying more. Um,
And plus, I collect old dictionaries. So,
like I say, right
what
above
am
my
I to
head.
say?
To be fair, they're stunning. I don't read, but you know, he does, so. But one thing that I mean, he was pretty appreciative as well on was the detail in them. And like you
Yeah,
said, with the second generation having more money to put more details in, that was probably one of the things that and I'd like to speak for everyone else who's listening, yeah, I'm looking at you, um, who just appreciated how much went into it. Because like I mean, with Rainbow High as well, one of the main reasons why I was like, yeah, I'll grab a couple of them off the shelves is because I just love it when you can tell that so much passion went into it. And you're like, yeah, let's get those little chains on Spectra. Let's put the details in the shoes. And the shoes,
That was the most
you're
fun thing at the time was the shoes. We had a great time
that's
designing
the
all the shoes.
shoes.
Yeah.
they they're stunning. I mean, to be fair, a little throwaway question for you then. Who's your favorite set of shoes?
Oh. Um, that's really tough. I did love Dawn of the Dance Cleo's. She has a heelless one, but the diamonds dangling from it because they're
Yes.
like, there's no way you can do this. Like, we don't know how you're gonna do this, but we figured it out and did it. So
Think of like a shoe with no heel.
Okay.
And it's got like a little string with a pyramid dangling from it. So it's not on the floor, it's like dangling under the shoe.
Oh yeah, that is cute.
Stunning.
That's cute.
yeah.
Details. That's what we
Yeah.
mean.
I like it. I don't know. I'm not sure which line it is. It's the ones at the bottom.
G3.
Yeah. I liked that they all came with like a bag and a snack and like all the tiny things, like all the phones and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I was just like, it's just insane to hold something so small and be able to like the additional thing of like being able to open it, being able to like read like a text on one of the tiny phones,
Yeah.
like stuff like that.
Nice.
It's just a really nice touch.
I did love on the oh my God, what were they called? There was the home ick. Then Laguna was in Mad Science Lab and Gulia was in physical education. They came with the lockers and they had like the actual locking little skelette. And I love that we got to do the three-eyed frog from the webisodes with Laguna. So he was in the
Yes.
jar. So that was really fun. Yeah.
I absolutely loved that. I mean, even with the original playset, like the fold out high school,
Yeah.
if I don't get my hands on one soon, I think I'm gonna cry. But when my
Is that the one that we saw recently?
no, that was the G3 high
Oh,
school.
okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay. And I
They're-
mean, to be fair, in our conversation before we had the interview, when we were talking about the resale value, with like Laguna missing like two legs, and they're like, here, $300, please. With the high schools, like first off, loved it to bits. My friend Alana, hi Alana. Um, she got it for Christmas one year and she invited me around, and I was like, girl, you're gonna have to kick me out of your house because I'm about to fold it up and run. But like people will like draw all over them, lose all the accessories like the small pens and the notebooks.
Yeah.
Detail. And they'll be like, I need like 500 quid for this. It's like broken, the doors are missing, the gargoyles have been painted. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna wait for a good price. But
At
with
high school,
the
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, buddy.
I was gonna say I worked on the high school, and it actually had started off as we get stuff from inventors too. So sometimes inventors submit things, and they had submitted a folding Barbie house, but Barbie wasn't using it. I was like, oh my God, I think we could use that for the high school, so it could fold up, so you could take it away, and it can fold in all these different rooms. So we worked with them to relay it out, and then because the webisodes were in Flash, they could output everything in as an Illustrator file. So we could take it's like vector art. So we could take all the vector art and put it inside there. So it was literally the art from the webisodes is used inside the high school to make it look
That's
as
so
close as
cool.
possible. So it was a lot of fun to work on and put all those little details and stuff in there.
Yeah. Oh God, I love the little bathroom on the back of one of the walls. I thought that was really cute. But even with the lockers, because I don't know if it was home ec first and then went into the high school or the other way around, but the lockers in the high school as well had like the little skeleton locks as well. So where did they come from first?
The I don't remember which line came first either, but they were the same, I think, if I remember correctly. Well, I'd have to look. Some of the details, I don't remember every little detail anymore, but or we had to redo them because I think the original ones were very complicated, like they're expensive to make, so we simplified them for the high school to make it a little bit easier. So, but
The gone.
You can get it. You can get it.
I can get it. I can find it. Um, Kind of like going into like the detail of everything and like the budget and stuff. And call me cheeky, but when would you say it was that kind of like the budget started going down a bit and you had to be a little bit more resourceful for the dolls? Like, what was the line?
um maybe like 2015-ish, as the brand was getting bigger, they wanted to make more money. So a lot of times there's international countries that the dolls are just so expensive that we need to make a lower price for. And so that's where sort of cheaper outfits, maybe less articulation starts to come in because those markets, it's just we can get the doll down to a price point that's more accessible to everyone in that country. And then usually they don't come to the US, but the US has started taking more and more of those dolls at places too. So by 2015, ish 2014 2015 ish we had to start doing some of those type of dolls, which I think is fine, like as long as we're still offering the other stuff and it's not everything's becoming these less articulated dolls with molded tops and stuff like that, it's fine. But yeah, it's hard because sometimes the better that something does, the more money they want to make off of it, so the
Mm.
less the product designers get to use to spend on the actual product so they can make more off of it. So it's just, it's one of those things too, like
Um,
especially in a big portfolio item like Mattel, where there's a lot of things, if other things are underperforming, it means that this brand has to work even harder for the company. So it needs, to make even more money. So if we take a few pennies out here and there that you're spending on something, it means that we'll make more on the back end. So I mean, it's business capitalism, I understand it, but sometimes you're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, for what your vision was originally and how it boosted it up, you'd think that the higher ups and the shareholders had maybe listened to the people that had the creative eye of it. Because I feel like that didn't happen a lot.
No, I mean, a lot of the times, and it's just the way corporate America is, and not every toy company is like this. Not everyone at Mattel is like this. A lot of it's we were just designers. It was like we were too passionate about things. We didn't understand how the business worked, things like that. And it could get frustrating at times, but you just try to do the best job, put your passion into it because that's how it makes the toy great. And hopefully people outside see that. So
So in the situation where you kind of don't have quite as much to work with in terms of budget, when it did come to kind of maybe like having to scale back out of necessity, what is the thing that you would like prioritize? What's the thing that you're like, that has to stay. We need to work around that.
So the one thing that we could always keep was like sculpted detail because it doesn't
Yeah.
cost anything when you're making the tool. So we just try to make sure that there's a lot of sculpted detail. It's a double-edged sword though, because then it looks like it should be painted a lot of the times, but you're just trying to get some more stuff on there so it doesn't look so flat and plain. And then a lot of times we could, instead of just having like a one color outfit or dress, we could put like a print on it. So that way it was a little bit more visually appealing. Even if it was a simple dress, it'd have a print, things like that. We would simplify the hairstyles because hair could be very expensive to do because people are still literally hand doing hair in Asia to do all the hairstyles. There's somebody styling all their hair. There's groups of people doing that. So you'd find places to trim back and hopefully combining a couple things would let you get some of the stuff that you did want.
Nice.
Nice one. With kind of circling back a little bit into what you worked on with once you'd made the characters and you'd kind of like built the world and everything like that, did you like what the direction went in, like towards how the characters actually got flushed out in the show and the movies and everything like that? Or did you have like a different vision that they actually put out?
No, I mean we had like we had done character bios and we had like rough drawings to show what all the characters look like. They didn't look exactly like they do now, but they're pretty close. So like people had a general idea of what the character looked like, who they were. And then we even did some like rough, like we fleshed out like here's teachers at the school, here's some classes that they take. We even bring some like here's some rough, like if we were gonna get episodes, here's some episode ideas, what the girls could do and stuff like that. So I think it turned out pretty close because we were able to hand all that stuff off to our entertainment team. Then of course they have to make the world even bigger. So they created a whole bunch of background characters and stuff like that. It was moving so fast in the beginning that we didn't always get stuff shared with us. But later on, the team eventually came back to us like, hey, we want to make sure everything works together better. So we started working together more, which was helpful because in the beginning it was just sort of like the entertainment was going off in their direction and we had all the diaries and they weren't paying attention to what was happening in the diaries and stuff like that. So like we just wanted everything. So we retconned some stuff later on too and did what we could. But I think overall it turned out good. The one thing is like I love that Dracula is short, but we didn't realize when they were showing us art she was that short because we at the time were doing all the dolls the same height so they could all share clothes. So when Dracula was so short, we're like, what? Where'd that come from? We didn't see it until the webisodes were done. So it was like, okay, well, we can't go back and change it now. She's already done. So we couldn't change her height. And then there are things like I wasn't the biggest fan of the design that they did for Claude because he just looked nothing like his doll. So like it was fine, but like he was like this super big buff dude, but like it didn't fit with sort of what the look we had come with the line. Everyone was sort of like, we want to make sure like if the female character's gonna be thin, everyone's gonna be thin. So it's just sort of the look for the world. And so then he just didn't sort of fit into it. He didn't match his doll at all, but he was still a really fun character, and I liked what he did in the show and stuff like that. And he was great. It's just a little frustrating they didn't quite match what he was like in his doll form.
It's nice that you guys kind of, in the end, kind of met in the middle. But I
Yeah.
think this is also something for any Monster High fans that are listening is next time you want to make little digs or argue with each other about, little bits of details, there you go. Not everyone was in contact with each other. Drop it. There doesn't need to be
Yeah.
a constant fight in comments.
And I mean, that's what's hard too, is like sometimes everything's moving so fast. They have their deadlines to meet, we have our deadlines to meet.
Yeah.
So it's as much as you like there to be more synergy between the two. Sometimes it just couldn't happen at the time. So
With kind of like having a bit of a frustration towards like Claude's model in the webisodes, was there anything because obviously once you let it go into a company and you've got all these people working on it, it kind of blows up because once you release art, it's not really yours anymore. And which sucks, but um, what was something that you actually just kind of didn't like that you were just like, I just wish they hadn't done that?
There wasn't a whole lot for Monster High because luckily because they needed someone to approve a lot of the exterior stuff. It came to me because I was the manager, so I saw a lot
Nice.
of the stuff that was happening. Um, so I think the the only thing that was a little frustrating was the book series. I think that they were really fun, but they just didn't tie back into the actual brand
Yeah,
that Lacey Harrison did. Like, shoot, I got to meet her. She was great. I like meeting her. She was really fun. Like her stories were fun and stuff like that. But it just didn't tie into the brand at all. It was like a separate story, and so I think it confused people in the beginning a little bit. Like, is it this or is it that? So that was, I think, a little
yeah.
confusing because there's a lot of things like, oh, people don't need everything to line up. But I was like, I think you kind of, when you're starting a new brand, you kind of do. Otherwise, it gets confusing because you don't know what it's about. So.
See, on the flip side of that, then, what was your favorite thing? Like something that you are just so happy it got out because that was like that's what I wanted for Monster High.
Oh. Um, Honestly, I think it's just Monster High getting out because it was such a struggle to get it out because there were so many things that like when it got pushed out twice, I thought it was dead. I'd been in Mattel a few years by then, and anything that had gotten pushed out a second time was dead. It never made it out the door. So I thought that the brand was dead and it was never going to happen. So when the fact that it got to shelf, I remember seeing it the first time in Toys R Us here in the States. I wish we still had Toys R Us, but I went to Toys R Us. It was on shelf for the first time. I cried. Like I couldn't. It was like finally real. It was out there. People were gonna
Oh.
see it. So it's just like the best feeling ever. So
I think that is really sweet. Oh my
it's really sweet.
God. I mean, to be fair, I still love seeing on your Instagram stories when when Catty came out and you get to see her on the shelf and you were like, it's just kind of surreal to see Monster High like back on the shelves again.
Yeah.
And we're kind of the same because in Norwich we don't have because here we've got a Smith's Toys. I don't know if that's the same thing in America. But that's
Oh,
like
that's
our
Smith.
big
I know what Smith is. Yeah.
hey, nice one. Um and the one where I'm from in Sheffield, that's like a decent size, but the one in Norwich is small and kind of tucked away outside of the centre, which is a ball ache to get to. And when we went in, I was just kind of like, I wish they had more.
It's
Like
nice to see some though,
it
because
was,
it was kind of it's the first time that I'd ever actually really seen it properly in a store.
yeah.
And first of all, I'm always so shocked at how tall the aisles are in toy stores. I'm like, It's meant to be for kids. They can't see that." But um but it was really, really cool to actually see them because the only ones that I'd ever really seen are the ones that you have.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like while you're like walking along the store, I was like, I can see why these stick out so much, and I can understand even more why they would have stuck out, especially when they first came out. Like I can imagine the kind of the toy world as it was then. Like looking back at it, I'm like, they were begging for something like that. Like that was the itch that needed to be scratched at the time. And obviously it it obviously was because it obviously has done so well since. I'm still really surprised that it's done well in Russia. That's such a cool fact.
It's been really cool to see how big it's gotten, how big it was, and then how
Yeah,
big new one's getting and stuff like that. It's just you didn't, I think I said before, you don't think something this little idea that you have is ever gonna get this big. And so just that it got out, I was happy, but then how big it's got has just been so amazing. And like, yes, I don't work on it anymore, but it's still really cool to sort of see where it's going. It's almost like it's your kid and it's gone off to be its own thing and you're getting to
yeah.
see it be its own person. So it's pretty cool.
So one of the things that you've spoken to me quite a lot about when it comes to Monster High is so obviously it's it's to do with the monsters, but there's also this like very human part of the dolls in the stuff like all of their different nationalities and ethnicities and everything. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that you have spoken about them a lot.
Yeah.
And I do you like that must feel you must feel quite proud that there's an awful lot of people from an awful lot of different places that have kind of seen themselves be represented in such like a unique way.
Yeah, that was the nice thing about Monster High because they were monsters and they look so different. It let us represent a lot of different people too. And sometimes it was intentional, sometimes it wasn't. Like Gulia, we had her speaking zombie, and it didn't dawn on us that it was like kind of like she was autistic. So like when people brought up like, oh my gosh, that totally works too. Like we just thought it was this clever way of making her a unique character where all the zombies speak zombie, and some of the students speak zombie too, so they understand her, and it creates this fun sort of narrative when they're having conversations that you don't always necessarily know what she's saying, but everyone else does. And it just worked out that it was this nice thing that then tied into autism as well. But like Claudine was always sort of designed as being, we say African American here, but black. She was always a black character because her skin was brown. And so that made it easy because we could push back on, there were countries that they refused to take any doll that's black, but they would take Claudine because she's a werewolf and that's not. So like we get around some of the stuff. So, but yeah, it still happens today. There's still countries that won't take black dolls, and so they have to get pulled out of the assortment or they just don't take it at all. It's very frustrating when you're trying to like make sure like everyone's represented, but other countries like, oh no, that won't sell here. We're not going to take it. So
Crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I feel like a lot of doll brands, like when you walk down the aisles, it's usually all pink, pink down the floor, pink down the walls, and it's usually just white. You
Yeah.
walk down, you get
There's a lot
blinded
of
by
white.
the whiteness. You're like, oh God. Um, and I think it just kind of draws into exactly what you've both just said of just being able to just like sneak things in like that, even though it's not really sneaking,
Yeah.
it is very
It's
plainly
it's kind of it's
obvious.
kind of putting it within a different context that if for whatever reason it like someone wouldn't take it, it kind of it doesn't I wouldn't say it kind of shoehorns it in, but it's nice that you guys took the opportunity of because obviously it's not just human skin tones
Yeah.
that are in Monster High. You've got quite literally an awful lot of different colors going on. And I just think it's wonderful that that context was there and you still got to put an awful lot of different kinds of humans in there as
Yeah.
well, even under the guise of it being monsters.
Yeah. Them being monsters definitely like it opened doors for us to do
Yeah.
things, and have things in there that maybe weren't obvious to some people, even if they were, right there in front of them. But it was just like so that was nice. Like being and to let us get away with a lot of stuff too. We did a lot of stuff that other toy lines weren't allowed to do. Like I think Venus was the first fashion doll to ever have like the side of her head shaved, other than like a
Yeah.
boy doll. Like she was like the first female character to do it. Um, like we got told no on a lot of things, like, oh, Claudine, you can't have her ears on the top of her head because you can't root that. But then we pushed and we were able to do it. So it got us other horns and things like that happening. Um, Even with Wedona, they're like, oh, there's no way you can get 6 arms on a doll like that size. There's just no way. But we did it. We figured it out. And we had an amazing sculpting team on Monster High. So the lead sculptor, his name was Adam DeFelice, and he was just so good. You could give him like a couple of reference images and be like, okay, go. And then he would come back with like the most amazing sculpts on stuff. So
I'll say I do one thing that has like really fascinated me when it comes to all of the dolls and everything. Because like I said, I came in not knowing anything. And but it's like it is the art and it is the fashion and it is the creativity, but there is an inignorable degree of like engineering to it as well.
Gotcha.
Like even though it is the clothes and it is the character, it's also the opposability in it actually working and
yeah,
functioning and being playable as well. And it's just, I think Monster High is a really fantastic example of all of those things working together really well and being so cohesive in that way. especially when it comes to a doll having 6 arms. Like,
Yeah.
like it becomes a wonderful excuse to try and do what people probably thought before that is like
The
extremely
impossible.
challenging to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up playing with dolls and action figures, and so I feel like it sort of combines a lot of the things I saw in action figures into dolls that weren't necessarily happening. So like we took a lot of those things that maybe an action figure would do, like multiple arms, or putting with River, putting her bones floating inside of her skin, things like that, um, putting those sort of hidden things in there. Because I thought a lot of the times our feature was the details on the dolls. Like when you got it out, you could turn the doll around and there was details on her back. Like it wasn't just like you turn around, it's like, oh, it's a solid color. Oh, okay. But even if you
Yeah.
undress the doll, there's sculpted details sometimes. Like the whole doll was like you're discovering what the details on it and stuff were like that. So that's what we always tried to push for, the monster details being on every character and stuff like that. And these little things that as you play with them, you find more and more stuff on them.
I mean, Jackson and Nephra, for example, like the tattoo on his back and the scar on her arm, like just little things like that, that unless you obviously started undressing them and playing with them as fashion dolls, like just little things like that that you trickled in is just so like, and I didn't even know until it kind of got pointed out to me because I remember saying to old friend Alana, like, "Oh, I've just took Nephra's top on. Why she got this brown mark?" And she was like, "Think it's a scar." And so we read through her diary and we're like, "Oh my God, that is so cool."
Yeah.
Give yourself a pat on the back, honestly.
I mean, that goes to the whole team. Like everyone on there working on their characters, they really tried to bring them to life and make them as, the realest monsters that they could be. So that was always the fun part. It was us getting together to talk about what new monsters we wanted. So if we know this is the monster type, what does that make their personality? What does that mean that their fashion style is? What does that mean that their likes and dislikes are? What does it mean what kind of pet they'll have? So having all those conversations was always really fun, and creating these new characters and even extending the old characters as we created more. We're like, oh, we could do this something cool with this character now because it gave us this idea. So
Ghouls, monsters, and non-binary monsters, thank you so much for tuning into this episode so far. Unfortunately, Acast won't let an episode be too long, so what we've done is split this episode into two, one coming straight after the other so you don't actually miss out on any of this interview. And with that, thank you so much for joining us on the Wet Bench. Bye!